They could double in number, like your Escherichia coli. Every 20 minutes, they double. Let's say you have 1 million Escherichia coli bacterial cells. During their multiplication, after 2 hours, 20 minutes only, I'm sorry. After 20 minutes, they could double. So they would become 20 million. That is called your generation time. How about metabolism? We would remember the concepts of your biochemistry. Can you remember like how glucose is produced in the body? Anybody? Plus 1 point. Have you heard about the Krebs cycle? Have you heard about the Emden-Meyerhof pathway? Have you heard about aerobic respiration, anaerobic pathway? So we will dig in deeper with all these pathways. And of course, we have your genetics. How bacteria exchange genetic material through different mechanisms. An example is your horizontal gene transfer. Also, the use of a bacteriophage. What is a bacteriophage? Anybody? A bacteriophage. It's a virus that can infect your bacteria. So by the end of this session, class, we will have a clearer understanding of bacterial cell structure, physiology, metabolism, as well as genetics. And this will be our springboard for more complex topics of clinical bacteriology. Let's briefly explore bacterial evolution and variation. Bacteria have evolved to thrive in virtually every environment on Earth, from extreme heat to deep oceans, adapting to their surroundings over billions of years. We have bacteria. We call them your psychrophilic bacteria, the psychrophiles, because they could survive in extreme cold temperature. You have also bacteria that could survive in extreme hot temperatures. We call them your thermophiles. We would know more about this in our succeeding slides. When it comes to variation, bacteria differ in atmospheric growth conditions. We have bacteria that would require oxygen, and we call them aerobic or anaerobic bacteria if they require oxygen.
Aerobic po.
Aerobic,
Aerobic,
very
sir.
good. While others, they don't require oxygen. We call them your
Anaerobic.
anaerobic. How about those bacteria or organisms that would require high concentration of carbon dioxide? How do we call them?
Canophiles.
Capnophiles. Capnophilic organisms. Also, bacteria have temperature requirements ranging from cold-loving, as I mentioned, the psychrophiles, to your heat-tolerant thermophiles. Bacteria differ also in cell structure. Differences in cell walls that would be the basis for Gram staining. a gram-positive and a gram-negative, which has a thicker peptidoglycan layer, a gram-positive or a gram-negative bacteria?
Gram
Gram
positive.
positive.
Gram-positive, very good. Now, the differences, let's say in the cell wall, could impact the bacterial survival as well as your antibiotic resistance. Have you heard about antibiotic resistance? This is one of the emerging health emergencies that we have right now, medical emergencies, because of our misuse of antibiotics. We develop antibiotic resistance. These evolutionary traits and variations make bacteria incredibly adaptable as well as resilient. Now, who are clinical microbiologists? You can become a clinical microbiologist after passing the licensure examination. As a generalist, you could still practice in the microbiology section. I am a specialist in microbiology. Whether you will be an entry-level registered medical technologist who will be assigned in the microbiology section or bacteriology section, or you are a specialist in microbiology, these are the roles that we have to perform. We will culture organisms from specimens. And this will involve growing microorganisms from patient samples to get a snapshot of what's present in the specimen. Can you give me examples of patient samples that we would be working in clinical microbiology or clinical bacteriology? I will give you one. Blood, correct. What else?
Sputum, sir.
Sir.
Urine, sputum, good. Stool, CSF. What else?
Tissues, Doc.
Feces or stool. What other body
Sputum po.
fluid? Sputum, correct. Your thoracic fluid, ascitic fluid. Have you heard about those fluids? Pericardial fluid, peritoneal fluid. You will have them more in your clinical microscopy. Later on, analysis of urine and other body fluids. Second role, classification and identification of organisms. So once cultured, organisms are identified to determine the possible cause of disease. By the way, in culturing, what do we need? We need an agar plate. Have you heard about your sheep blood agar? Or your blood agar plate? Or your McConkey agar? Or your chocolate agar? Or your nutrient agar? They're just like gelatin with nutrients needed by the bacteria to grow. And growth of bacteria would be indicated by what? Colonies. Colonies of bacteria, they are made of millions of bacterial cells. And we use them to test the organism further. Let's say performing gram staining to determine whether the bacteria is gram positive or gram negative. And then we go from there. If it's gram positive, we perform coagulase test. Because one of the most pathogenic gram-positive bacteria is your Staphylococcus aureus. Staphylococcus aureus is the causative agent of many infections, including blood infections, including boils, including skin infections, toxic shock syndrome, and many others. If it's gram-negative, based on the gram staining technique, then we would proceed with biochemical testing. I am just giving you an overview of what we are going to study. Are we clear at this point, guys? Anybody who would answer? Are we clear? Are you learning something?
Yes,
Are
sir.
you learning something new?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Hina, thank you for that response. Then we could predict and interpret based on our susceptibility pattern. What is the susceptibility testing? We analyze susceptibility patterns to guide treatment decisions, helping to improve patient outcomes. We use antibiotic discs. That's a traditional way of doing it to determine the most effective antimicrobial agent or antibiotic. That's the antibiotic that would be prescribed by your physician or by your medical doctor. And the purpose is, of course, to treat your infection, to treat your bacterial infection, to be specific. Now we have machines now that would perform like your microscan. We have that in our training lab. Though we have more sophisticated machines like your Vitek. We have now molecular techniques, MALDI-TOF, mass spectrophotometry. So please go over, this more modern machines that we could use. So these are the three roles of a clinical microbiologist. And they would contribute, we will contribute in the diagnosis of infections and also ensure effective treatment. Moving forward, understanding bacterial relationships to isolation is crucial in microbiology or clinical bacteriology. So let's know the growth requirements that will help us determine the appropriate medium, the agar plate for primary culture. We call that your culture medium or culture media. And in the Philippines, you can prepare your own culture media, or you could just order commercially. Now, this will increase the likelihood of successfully isolating the pathogen, especially when you will be using a selective culture medium. It will just allow the growth of a specific bacteria, like your Bordetella pertussis. Have you heard about pertussis? The whooping cough? The selective medium is for uh, Bordetella pertussis will be your, anybody who knows the for Bordetella um, pertussis. I missed that. Let me look Bordetella. Well, this selective media, they contain antibiotics that would kill other organisms aside from your bacteria that you are looking for. So we could have a Regan low medium for that, for Bordetella pertussis, or you could have a Bordet Gengao. I was thinking about that a while back. Bordetella, Bordet Gengao medium. And also we have your Bordetella selective medium. Pertussis became a sporadic infection in the Philippines recently, but good thing it was controlled. We have also the steps in bacterial identification, such as I mentioned about gram staining a while back. That would be the first basis of identification of bacteria. Cell wall structure, the organism size, as well as the shape. We have the spherical shape or round shape. We call them your cocci. Rod shape, your bacillus or bacilli. And then spiral or coma shape, we call them your spirillum. Next, we observe metabolic biochemical reactions which provide further clues about the organism. Like, is the organism able to produce an enzyme that will break down a substance produced by the organism? Example of this one, we have your coagulase test. So if the bacteria could produce coagulase, then it could facilitate clotting or hardening of the solution. We have also the change in colors, like methyl red, your indole test, your Voges Proskauer, and your citrate utilization. So we test this bacteria in terms of whether they could utilize citrate for their metabolism. Let's move further. History of the microbial world, and you had this one already in the first topic. Anton von Leeuwenhoek is considered to be the father of protozoology and bacteriology. And by observing beasties or animalcules using a very simple lens, which was further developed to become our microscope. Anton van Leeuwenhoek laid the foundation for microbiology, opening the door to our understanding of the microbial world, such as your bacteria, parasites, fungi, and your viruses. Now, among the four, which is considered to be acellular or a non-living entity? Anybody?
Virus, sir.
Po.
Your viruses. 1 point for you. Please, you could email me with that 1 point. Among these four, which is prokaryotic? Anybody?
Parasites, sir.
No, it's your bacteria.
Bacteria po.
Parasites, fungi, they are eukaryotic. Bacteria, single-celled organisms with diverse metabolic and structural characteristics. Parasites, they harm the host all the time. You will have another course for parasitology, but you would have the roundworms like your um, Enterobius vermicularis, Ascaris lumbricoids. You have also your flatworms, your tapeworms. We have also your amoebae, your protozoans, Entamoeba histolytica. So these are the parasites of concern. We have malaria, plasmodia, And then fungi, you have another course for this. And I'm also teaching clinical mycology and clinical virology. Fungi would include your molds and yeasts. Not all fungi are pathogenic. We have edible fungi like the mushroom, but that's not our concern. It's the yeast that can cause infection. It's the mold that can cause infection. An example is your Candida albicans, which is common, of course, among women or females. Viruses, they are acellular. They need a viable host in order to replicate. They could contain either the DNA or the RNA virus. So let's have each organism individually. First one, bacteria. They're classified as prokaryotes, meaning they are basically different from eukaryotic cells. Prokaryotes lack organelles such as a nucleus, mitochondria. What is mitochondria, guys? It's your powerhouse of the cell or the power generator of the cell. Also, they lack endoplasmic reticulum. Your eukaryotes, they have nucleus, mitochondria, and Additionally, bacteria are unicellular, single-celled organism. However, they could form into a group. They could be in a colony or a biofilm. Now, I want to show you a gram-positive and gram-negative bacterial structures. Blue, gram-positive. Red is gram-negative or pink. That's the color when you use the gram stain. As you mentioned a while back, peptidoglycan layer, we have thicker among gram-positive bacteria. What is the function of your peptidoglycan layer? It will give structural strength and retain the crystal violet stain during gram stain. That color, the blue color or the purple color of crystal violet, will be the color of your gram-positive because it has been retained. Even if you decolorize it with alcohol, ethyl alcohol, then it would still have high affinity to your peptidoglycan layer. Also, a gram-positive bacteria, it lacks an outer membrane compared to your gram-negative bacteria. It means to say gram-positive bacteria are more susceptible to certain antibiotics. What else? In gram-positive, presence of teichoic acid in your gram-positive. Your teichoic acid is responsible for the rigidity of the cell wall. Gram-negative, thin. It has peptidoglycan layer but thinner than your gram-positive bacteria. Also, we have an outer membrane, and the outer membrane is made of what? Lipopolysaccharide or your LPS. What is the function of the outer membrane? It's an additional barrier. Gram-negative also, they have a periplasmic space. This periplasmic space will house your enzymes. Also, the outer membrane will contribute to the resistance of the bacteria to many antibiotics. So these structural differences between gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria will influence their staining properties with gram stain or with an acid-fast stain, and also their pathogenicity. Remember, these virulence factors could contribute to the pathogenicity of the bacteria. Let's say the presence of flagella, the presence of pili for attachment, the presence of a capsule that would prevent phagocytosis or your self-engulfment. Also, these structures would help bacteria to combat antibiotics, to combat any human defenses, human body defenses. Like, as I mentioned, capsule. The presence of capsule will prevent phagocytes like your segmenters, your neutrophils, your monocytes to engulf the bacteria. Let's move on with parasites. They're a diverse group of organisms with the following characteristics. Parasites are eukaryotic. It means they have organelles and a more complex cellular structure. They could be single-celled or multi-celled organism. Example of a single-celled organism would be your protozoa. I mentioned about amoebae a while back. That's your Sarcodina. I mentioned, I want to add also about your flagellates, like your Giardia duodenalis or Giardia intestinalis, or your trypanosomes, or your Leishmania. These are all flagellates. They have flagella. By the way, your Sarcodina or amoebae, they have pseudopodia, or your false feet. We have also a one ciliate, Ciliophora, your Balantidium coli, and of course, your sporozoans, your Plasmodia, causative agent of malaria. On the other hand, parasites could also be multicellular, such as your roundworms, tapeworms, flatworms, flukes. These are all multi-celled parasites. Parasites could also be motile or non-motile. As I mentioned a while back, protozoans. They could have flagella, that's your flagellates. They could have pseudopodia, false feet, your amoebae or your sarcodina, and cilia, your ciliate, Balantidium coli. Next is your fungi. Well, you could say it fungi, you could say it fungi. Fungi could be heterotrophic eukaryotes. It means that this fungi obtain nutrients through absorption, breaking down organic matter in their environment. They are good scavengers. If you go to a forest and you see decaying leaves, decaying twigs, decaying branches of trees, it's because of your fungi. How about a yeast? It's a unicellular fungus that reproduce asexually, typically by budding. While most fungi are predominantly multicellular and can reproduce both asexually and sexually, depending on environmental conditions. Usually we call them your dimorphic fungi. Dimorphic fungus would exhibit two forms, yeast or mold. Yeast, if they stay at the body's temperature or in an environment mimicking the body's temperature, which is 35 to 37 degrees Celsius. They become mold, like filaments, at room temperature. An example is your bread mold at home. I want to share also the different structures of an eukaryotic cell. All right, so I'll describe and tell me the part of the cell. It's found in the cytoplasm or attached to the RAF endoplasmic reticulum. They function for protein synthesis. Anybody?
Ribosomes
Ri-
po, sir.
ribosomes.
Ribosomes. Very good. The suicidal bags of the eukaryotic cell. Your
Mitochondria po.
lysosomes and your peroxisomes. It processes, packages, and transports proteins and lipids within vesicles.
Golgi apparatus, sir.
Correct, your Golgi apparatus, known as the powerhouse of the cell because it produces ATP through cellular respiration.
Mitochondria.
Mitochondria, very good. It is used for protein synthesis with ribosomes attached to its surface. Is it rough or smooth
Rough
endoplasmic
ER.
reticulum?
Rough
Rough
endoplasmic
endoplasmic
reticulum,
reticulum.
sir.
Very good. The control center of the cell.
Nucleus.
Nucleus.
Nucleus po.
I hope the class representatives are taking note, or you can just message your class representative. I had 5 recitations today, so please do that every after USM. Which part of the eukaryotic cell will have the DNA? Nucleus, very good. It is the site for ribosome production. Nucleolus. It is found, it will provide structural support and aids in intracellular transport and cell division.
Cytoskeleton.
Correct. Your Miss Avila, cytoskeleton. Another group will be your viruses. They're the smallest infectious particles, cannot be seen by an ordinary bright field or light microscopes like your compound or even your binocular bright field microscopes. A virus may contain a DNA or RNA, but never both. Now, the DNA could be single-stranded or double-stranded, or the RNA could be single-stranded or double-stranded. Unlike living organisms, such as your bacteria, parasites, fungi, viruses are not composed of cells and lack the structures typical of cellular life. Their OIPs means obligate intracellular parasites. They cannot replicate on their own and require a host cell. Like your COVID-19, coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2. Viruses are often host-specific, infecting only particular types of cells. Viruses may emerge. Just like your COVID-19, they could just emerge within a specific period. Viral emergence is the process of identifying and understanding new or re-emerging viruses. Viruses are becoming better characterized through various factors such as what is their DNA or RNA composition. That would be a very good basis for classifying and understanding viruses. So DNA viruses, RNA viruses. Also observing how a virus affects its host. What else? Studying the biochemical properties of viruses. Tracking where viruses are prevalent. That would help in predicting outbreaks, such as the pandemic that we had. Resistance profiles also will reveal how a virus can survive in different environments. Also, resistance to pH and temperature changes. And of course, we can use serological tests to detect immune responses. If you have high titer of antibodies against a virus, then you are immune. You have been sensitized. You are now protected for long time, even for life, against that viral infection. So we would skip the following slides, guys. We would not include them in your quiz because we're done with taxonomy, correct? So we would skip all this up to this nomenclature. All right, so we would now have slide 26. Cells are classified into 3 domains based on their structure and characteristics. We mentioned a while back that bacteria are prokaryotic cells characterized by the absence of membrane-bound organelles, and they are our primary focus in clinical bacteriology. Known as extremophilus, your archaea thrive in extreme environments such as high temperature or high salinity. Again, we call them like halophilic, because they love salty environment. We have thermophilus. They love hot environments. They are rarely encountered in clinical bacteriology. Your eukarya, these are eukaryotic cells that are more complex than prokaryotes and contain membrane-bound organelles like the nucleus and mitochondria. This domain, eukarya, will include animals, plants, fungi, and protists, like your paramecium. To expand on cellular classification, prokaryotes include bacteria and your archaea, while your eukaryotes will include fungi, protozoa, algae, animals, and plants. If you notice, prokaryotes, they are simpler cells without membrane-bound organelles, while your eukaryotes are more complex and they contain organelles such as your nucleus and mitochondria. It's important to note that disease-causing bacteria or the pathogenic bacteria, they're also prokaryotes that infect eukaryotic host, showcasing the interactions between these domains. And our concern for medical bacteriology will be the pathogenic bacteria or the disease-causing bacteria. Now let's focus on archaea, a unique domain of life. They are the most closely related to eukaryotic cells despite being prokaryotic in structure. They include microorganisms that thrive in extreme environments such as hot springs. Have you been to a hot spring? Salt flats and acidic conditions. Archaea, their cell walls lack peptidoglycan, which would differentiate them from bacteria. Also, they can stain as gram-positive or gram-negative. Their cell envelope and specialized enzymes enable survival in harsh conditions that would showcase their remarkable adaptability. So we're done with the different membership of organisms as well as the domains of cellular organisms. So we now focus on your bacterial cell structure. And again, we would be underscoring the differences between a prokaryotic from an eukaryotic cell. So far, do you have any question? Did you learn something new? New concepts from the
Yes, Doc.
Yes,
Thank you for responding. All right, so let's examine the key cytoplasmic structures of
Ready ka
bacterial
na magkasal ah.
cells. Who was that? Can you please mute your microphone? Thank you. Bacteria lack a true nucleus, which distinguishes bacteria from eukaryotic cells. Their genetic material is a single cellular chromosome. And where do we find that? In bacteria, it's in their cytoplasm. The DNA is found in a diffuse nucleoid region, sometimes attached to a mesosome. What's a mesosome? It's a sac-like structure in the cell membrane. In certain bacteria, spores may be present. These are highly refractile bodies that provide resistance to extreme conditions. Boiling cannot destroy spores. Spores, they're considered to be virulent factors of some bacteria. Example, we have your Bacillus species. We have your Clostridium species or your Clostridia. We will have them. How do we destroy your spores? We do autoclaving, moist heat, or heat under pressure. If you're familiar with a pressure cooker at home, that is the principle of autoclaving. I'm sure that you would learn how to use an autoclave in your clinical bacteriology laboratory. Let's delve deeper into cytoplasmic structures of bacteria. Bacterial ribosomes are composed of RNA and proteins. Bacterial ribosomes are found in the cytoplasm or attached to the cytoplasmic membrane, and they serve as the sites of protein synthesis. We have also the 7 Svedberg ribosomes. S is Svedberg. The S stands for Svedberg units, which measure sedimentation rates during high-speed centrifugation. The values are not additive due to surface area loss when the subunits bind together. Therefore, we have 70 S ribosomes in the cytoplasm of bacteria, and they are composed of 50 S and 30S subunits. Guys, can we have a 15-minute break? I need to go to the bathroom. So you could have a break, bathroom break, water break, or you could even have your breakfast. I'm sorry, I'm taking a 3-day antibiotic. Today is my last day. I think this is a, a side effect of that antibiotic. All right, I'll see you after 15 minutes. Thank you.